We are not your grandmothers and grandfathers in NAACP, and I know some chapters that's what I think of. We wanted to make this organization that already existed, that had a name, to see if we could make it work more effectively for justice in our community. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of Race, Religion, and Politics. We always jokingly say that race, religion, and politics is the very thing that your mama and your daddy and your boss man told you not to talk about, but we think are important things that we need to discuss. Race, religion, and politics shapes everything in our lives. On this episode, we're going to talk about Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is the African American holiday. Was founded in 1966 by Black Studies professor Maulana Karenga. And Kwanzaa is a Kiswahili, or most of you know it as the Swahili word that means first fruits. It really has reference to African people, or the descendants of African people, giving thanks to the harvest, to recognize the best in ourselves, and to present the best fruits that we raised the previous year. It's an African harvest. It's a combination of African harvest celebrations that last anywhere from 3 or 4 days to 40 days. We understand, but in this particular case, Professor Karenga created this holiday. And let me stop and say, holiday means holy days. These are days, or a day or days that people set aside to worship or to acknowledge the best in themselves. And generally that means they also acknowledge their relationship to the Creator. But we believe that in a larger sense, Kwanzaa creates a theoretical construct in which Black people or African people can begin to re-examine our humanity, our failures, our shortcomings, our strengths. We can take a look at our history and affirm our humanity by affirming our Africanness, so that we're clear about where we come from, and we begin the long, arduous task of reimagining who we are, reimagining what our place in the world should be, and how we can make that happen for ourselves. And so the holiday was not designed to take the place of Christmas. It starts on December 26th and it goes through January 1st. And there are 7 days, and each day has a different symbol. And what we're going to do is that we're going to get into those symbols, and we're going to take a look at our table. We have a table set up, and we're going to talk a little bit about how Kwanzaa is celebrated. And I encourage anybody that's interested in celebrating it, or at least understanding it, or at least understanding those principles, to give us a call at our Crittenden County NAACP office at 901-378-6743, 901-378-6743. We're open Tuesday through Friday from 11 to 4 p.m. And our email is CrittendenCountyNAACP@gmail.com, or you can reach me at Shabaka, Shabaka50 to Shabaka50 at AOL.com. And so we'll be glad to talk about it. And if you want to arrange to have someone to come to your church or to your school to discuss it with your students or your congregants, we are available to do that on appointment. And so we appreciate you for tuning in this evening. We're going to talk a little bit about the things that you see on our table. The first thing I want you to see, you see the candles shining, and the candles are in something called a kinara. The kinara is a candle holder, and there's 7 candles. You see red candles, you see a black candle, and you see green candles. And those colors, red, black, and green, you see them in flags. As a matter of fact, there's a flag back there, and you see other items on the table that are red, black, and green. Red, black, and green was presented as a flag of liberation by the Honorable Marcus Garvey during the when he was head of the United Negro Improvement Association. Some people erroneously call it the Back to Africa movement, and that was also a part of it. But he gave us those colors. The red, of course, is for our struggle, which is the blood. The green is for our wealth and our future that we are to build, and the black represents the people. Now, if we were actually doing a Kwanzaa celebration today, we would have only lit one candle. But since we're just kind of going through this so you can get a better understanding of it, we just lit them all at one time. In fact, on the last day of Kwanzaa, which that day is the money, you would have all 7 candles lit. On each day of Kwanzaa, a new candle will be lit as a symbol of the Kwanzaa, or Nguzo Saba, or principle of the day. Kwanzaa has 7 basic symbols and 2 supplemental ones. The first day of Kwanzaa, we want to talk about the Nguzo Saba. Nguzo, that's N-G-U-Z-O, Saba, S-A-B-A. 7 principles, that's in Swahili. The first one is umoja. Umoja is unity, and it is to strive for unity in the race. The second principle, which is always my favorite, is a word called kuji chakulia, which means self-determination. It means to define ourselves and define our purpose and speak for ourselves, as opposed to having others speak for us. The third is ujima, which means collective work and responsibility, and you hear about that all the time when people are talking about what we need to be doing in our communities. And the fourth principle is ujama, which is cooperative economics. And we talk a lot about any group of people that are marginalized. If they fail to practice cooperative economics, then they will fail to be a relevant group and will always be exploited. The fifth is, of course, nia. That means purpose, to have a purpose. The sixth principle is kuumba, which means creativity. To always do as much as we can to make our communities safer and better and more prosperous. And of course, the last principle is imani, which means faith in the Swahili language. And you have to have faith, and I think scriptures tell us that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things that are not seen. And of course, about some of the things that you see on the table. Now you see the mazao, which is the crops. And these are symbolic of the African harvest celebrations and of the rewards of productive and collective labor. And you see the fruits there. You see the makeke, which is the mat. And the mat is symbolic of our tradition and history and the foundation on which we build. And if you'll notice, the mat's interwoven, so that shows the interwovenness of our families and our communities and how we need to be. And of course, we talked about the kanara. The kanara is the candle holder, and it's symbolic of our roots and of our foundation that holds us steady. Then we have the muhindi. The muhindi, that's the corn. And this is symbolic of our children and of our future, which they embody now. The corn, there are many pieces of corn on the ear that represents our wealth and our children. And then of course we have the Mishimaha Saba. Again, it's the 7 candles, and we've already talked about that. And then there's the Kikombe Cha Umoja. Because I've told you earlier that Umoja, which is the first day of Kwanzaa, means unity. And Kikombe Cha is the cup. It's called a unity cup. And symbolically, people drink from the same cup as a display of their unity. Of course, in traditions today, we just do a sipping motion. Most of us don't want to drink from the same cup anymore. And I don't blame them. And then of course, then we have the Zawadi. The Zawadi are the gifts. And if you can see there are some gifts. You can even see a bowl similar to what you might would call a Christmas present. But you know, we encourage people during Kwanzaa to give gifts, but we encourage them to give gifts that are culturally relevant, a book, or something that you made. And in fact, you see a lot of books on the table because the books represent knowledge. And we understand that without knowledge that we perish. And of course, if you look further down, look at the kente cloth. The kente cloth is unique to a West African people called the Ashanti. And usually the different patterns, very similar to Scottish plaids, become almost like a coat of arms or the symbol of a certain family. Each family would be represented by its own pattern of cloth. Then, of course, then you have the famous mud cloth, which I have on a jacket made of mud cloth, and my kufi, my hat, is made of mud cloth. But you see, the pretty mud cloth is made almost primarily in Mali, which is in West Africa. Then, if you look further down to the front of the table, you will see a kalimba. And this one's made of gold. Most of them are made of some type of wood. And if anybody remembers Earth, Wind & Fire, one of their earliest songs back in the early 70s was called Kalimba. And there's a guy that's playing it on. And if you ever watch any Roots episode, you hear the kalimba being played. And then underneath that, you see more mud cloth, beautiful in all types of patterns. And they tell me that the mud cloth isn't dyed; it's actually made in the ground, and it's made and it's designed by stripping the cloth of some of its color. I don't know. Look that up. That one's got me, but it's beautiful. A lot of people get pictures of it. It's just frame it and put pictures on the wall. Then, of course, it's sitting on top of something very famous. Now you'll see the Ashanti stool, and it's symbolic of the myth of the golden stool of the Ashanti people, the Ashanti king in West Africa. And of course, in the middle of this stool is the Sankofa bird. If you'll see, the Sankofa bird is looking back. And the reason he looks back, you look back before you go forward. That's why it's important for us to revere and honor our ancestors. It's important for us to know our history, because if we don't know our history, that we cannot be attached to our ancestors, therefore we'll be stripped of our power, which is one of the basic things that we have been trying to teach over the last 10 years at the Crittenden County NAACP. So I think we pretty much covered everything on the table. And as I said, if it wasn't for COVID, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be doing it on Zoom. But if it wasn't for COVID, you would see people all over Memphis, all over Little Rock, all over the United States, millions of people. You hear it referred to in movies when people say happy this and happy Kwanzaa and happy Christmas and happy Hanukkah, because we know that Kwanzaa has been installed in our minds now as a real serious holiday. We are not your grandmothers and grandfathers in NAACP, and I know some chapters that's what I think of. We wanted to make this organization that already existed, that had a name, to see if we could make it work more effectively for justice in our community.